Here's how I kitbash Jawdor. My custom Cawdor gang for Necromunda is one of my favorite kitbashes I've ever done. I call them Jawdor. It's a combination of Jawa and Cawdor. I'm pretty proud of that one. This requires a lot more green stuff work than normal, so buckle up. As you know, I'm not the best with green stuff. So if I can do it, you can do it. I used the official kit from Games Workshop and 3D printed parts. I'm gonna be making a Jawa with a heavy crossbow. As always, the first step to the kitbash is looking for inspiration. I looked up a lot of pictures of Jawas. Also, TheMakersCult recently released these bad boys, and they fit perfectly with what I'm trying to do. These legs in particular fit almost exactly with the official crossbowman's pose. Next, I found a torso I liked. Since this guy's gonna be a champion, I wanted one that stood out from the crowd a little bit. I also grabbed a little Jawa head I made in Blender. I posted them on Thingiverse and Cults 3D if you want to download them. Links in the description. I put those pieces in a little pile and rolled up some green stuff, making sure to cut out a little section where the two parts meet. There can be a little bit of cured green stuff in that area that can mess up your mix. I then put that aside. Green stuff is a lot easier to work with when it has been curing for about an hour or so. Then, I cut out other big bits I'm going to use with my flat wire cutters. Next, get rid of layer lines and excess bits of sprue by scraping with a hobby knife. I should probably get a new blade. Sharper is better. It goes without saying, be careful with knives. I scrape off layer lines to the best of my ability, then I go in with Tamira extra thin plastic glue and brush over where the lines were. This melts the plastic and creates a smooth finish. Just make sure not to use too much. You don't want to obscure detail. I glued the crossbow parts together. Before committing to anything big, I like to dry fit stuff together. This gives me an idea of where I might need to shave off material, what pose might look cool, or what I'd need to sculpt. Before I begin sculpting, I take a wet paper towel and wipe off my workstation. You don't want any random bits of past projects to fold into your green stuff or putty. Another prep step is to take a drop of oil, I'm using coconut oil, and put a thin layer onto your work surface in the back of your hand. My friend Grotgard on Instagram told me of the power lubricant holds, and now I understand. This will help keep your putty from sticking to you, your tools, your dog, and your workstation. A little goes a long way. You can also use water if you aren't ready to take that slippery leap. I'm gonna be making a bit of rope for this guy to match the rest of the gang. I squashed and pulled a little ball of green stuff as flat as I could. You can smooth it out and get rid of fingerprints by lightly running a silicone tool against the green stuff. I carefully got a tiny bit of oil onto my knife and cut out a clean square. Then, I carefully lifted the putty onto the model. Then I pulled the square around the mini until it was wrapping around in a way that I liked. With a tool, I made adjustments to give the cloth some shape. I also pressed into it to create folds and wrinkles. I then cut little holes and slits into the putty with a lubricated knife to give it a ratty appearance. Once I got it to a point where I was decently happy with it, I carefully dry fitted parts on to make sure I could still pose the mini in the way I wanted. I didn't want to ruin the fresh sculpt, so I set it aside to cure overnight. Since I made way too much green stuff, I worked on other projects that needed sculpting. You can practice making things like packs, or put some green stuff on a base and try to make a cool texture. I dry fitted the torso and the crossbow on the guy again, and then glued the crossbow into place. I then glued on one of my Jawa heads. Next, I rolled up some more green stuff. I needed the torso to be raised up a few millimeters, so I put a ball of green stuff on the connection point. I also put a little ball of putty onto the shoulder, because there was a big gap between the arm and the body. I used a silicone sculpting tool to make the shoulder look more natural. Before adding the other arm, I wanted to add a classic Jawa bandolier with pouches. I made the straps by flattening a square of green stuff and cutting off thin strips. But as I'm watching this back, I actually recommend taking a thin snake of green stuff, then gently flattening it with a toothpick or something, and making the strap that way. Then I pressed one end onto his back, and used a tool to move it around his body. I'm not worrying about how ugly his back looks since we'll be adding a backpack later. Then I glued and pressed on some 3D printed pouches. After gluing on the other arm, I made little straps to go around his shoulders and the tops of his arms. And here comes the scariest part, making the hood. First, make a little mohawk on the top of his head. This is to help the green stuff have something to stick to, and will help give the hood shape. On your lubricated workstation, make a square and cut it into a trapezoidal-esque shape. Set the trapezoid with the long side facing the front on top of the ball, and you're done.
I lied.
Carefully push the corners down into his collar. Make sure to press the top into the ball, or else it won't stick very well. Then I use my fingers with a little bit of coconut oil on them to close the back of the hood and continue going around the collar and pressing the edges of the hood in with a tool. Don't panic. Then I pinch the back into a point, then go back and make sure the front didn't fly out of his collar. Now go around and fine-tune how the hood is falling. I like to have the edges of the hood slightly flared out to make sure it looks like gravity is pulling on it. If the model is running around, you can also make it look like momentum is moving it. Lightly smooth out and get rid of any fingerprints or cuts with the silicone tool. Don't worry if things look super smooth. You can sand green stuff once it's fully cured. I also went in with a knife and made little holes to make it look ratty. I'm pretty happy with how the hood turned out, and equally as amazed that I kept it mostly in focus. Lastly, cut a little flat rectangle and push it into his hood. This creates a scarf sort of thing that covers the Mini's face a little. Then, using a flat sculpting tool, create little folds and creases on it. Honestly, you should probably do this before making the hood. It might be easier that way. I saw a picture online of a quiver for the heavy crossbow, so I'm going to be trying to make a worse version of that. You gotta get better somehow, right? Trying to emulate cool things you see is a good way to practice. First, I made a quiver-like shape. Made a little indent with a tool. I cut off the other crossbow bolt that was on the Cawdor sprue and stuck it into the quiver with a little glue on the end. I also took some wire and glued a 3D printed smoke grenade on the end of it. I wrapped a really small snake of green stuff around the end to make it look like the grenade was just haphazardly tied to the end. Then I stuck it into the quiver like before. I also added a spike from the Cawdor kit just to give it a little bit more length. I thought the quiver looked a little boring, so after it cured, I rolled some small straps and placed them around the quiver. To make a metal brace, I made a thicker strap and wrapped it around the top. Finally, I added tiny vertical strips to hold the brace in place. I'm glad I went back and added more detail. If you take anything from this video, it's that it's okay to work on a kitbash over the course of a few days. Letting everything cure in between levels of detail is a game changer. I added some texture paste for rust, and the kitbash was done. It's always scary looking at your kitbash before priming, but trust me, it always looks better with some paint on it. Thanks for watching. If you had any questions or feedback, let me know. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Alright, bye-bye!